Welcome to week 12. That means we've only got 40 more to go. Seems like a long time, but at the same time, we're into the quarter here, into the second quarter at this point. But so today we're going to look at the book of Joshua. Okay, and I want to kind of do Joshua justice, but at the same time, the middle portion of the book, we're not going to cover. I'll just kind of briefly, we get there, just kind of say probably a couple sentences and move on. But the beginning of Joshua chapter 1, basically what takes place is God says, okay, well, Moses is dead. You're up, Joshua. And you got to think for a moment there, kind of poor Joshua. Okay, those are big shoes that he's got to fill for this process. So look at Joshua chapter 1, verse 1. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant. Moses, my servant, is dead. Now you and all the people prepare to cross over the Jordan to the land I'm giving to the Israelites. So he's got some pretty big shoes to fill. I mean, I told you last time, I can't think of anybody in the Old or New Testament that spent as much one-on-one time with God himself than Moses did. And take away Jesus because, well, Jesus is God, so let's take him out of it. So other than that, there's nobody in Scripture that actually spent near the amount of time that Moses did face-to-face with God. And so he's leading them in, and he leads them through the wilderness and through this whole thing, but even he doesn't get to go in. And so God does what? God's like, okay, Moses is dead, and then he turns to Joshua and says, you're up. And it's some big shoes to fill. Okay? I don't know that I'd have wanted the job. Okay? Now, verse 3. I have given you every place where the sole of your foot treads, just as I promised Moses. Your territory will be from the wilderness and Lebanon to the great river, the Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and west of the Mediterranean Sea. No one will be able to stand against you. As long as you live, I will be with you, just as I was with Moses. I will not leave you or abandon you. That's a pretty good charge God's given him because, I mean, he knew better than anybody really what God had done with Moses, right? And had been with Moses. Okay, so he knew that, and the reality is he's got some massive shoes to fill, and God's telling him what? I'm going to be with you. I'm going to stick with you on this. Okay, it's got to be a pretty good comfort for the job that's at hand, and it's a big job. So, then he tells him, verse 6, be strong and courageous, for you will distribute the land I swore to their fathers. Okay, that I will distribute the land I swore to their fathers to give them as an inheritance. When did he tell them that? Well, that came from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob. Okay, God's told them, says this land back there where they were in, this land, I'm going to give as an inheritance. Okay, so Joshua, on top of everything else, I'm going to let you be the one that's going to distribute and proportion out the land that I promised. And by this point, we're getting close to we're in the 590-year range since the original time when God made the covenant with Abraham. There's been a lot of time passed. So, he says, to be strong and courageous. Then look at verse 7. Above all, be strong and very courageous to observe carefully the whole instruction my servant Moses commanded you. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to walk with you through this. I'm going to be with you the whole time. Nobody, no enemy is going to be able to stand before you. I'm going to take care of all that. Be strong and courageous. And then he comes back and says, be strong and courageous again. But then he puts what? Almost like a stipulation. To observe carefully all the instructions that I commanded Moses. I'm going to be with you. Be strong and courageous to what? Follow my instructions. That's kind of a weird statement. Being strong and courageous, you think, well, that just means I need to physically be ready to what? Take on the world. But he follows be strong and courageous with what? To obey everything that I, God, have commanded. Now, why would he say to be strong? Well, it takes courage to stand up. It takes strength to stand up and lead and follow the Lord. Okay? It takes a lot of courage to lead in godliness. The world don't like it. Okay? They just don't. Okay? Because what's going to happen is so many people are going to come against you. Okay? A lot of people would have wanted to come. A lot of people would have wanted to come against you. Okay? If in Joshua's day, a lot of people would have wanted to come against him. Now, look, did they Moses? They came across, and when they did, God dealt with them. Okay? But a lot of people want to come against you. So when you're in a leadership position, when you're walking with the Lord, it takes strength and courage to be able to do that, because it comes right at you from the front. People don't like that. Okay? But also, you got to be strong and courageous, because sometimes it's going to be quietly from behind, where you don't even see it coming. And you got to be ready to stand strong. You got to be courageous in those moments. So what's he telling him? He's telling him to be strong and courageous, have strength. Why? Because, well, walking with the Lord is not exactly for the faint of heart. Because sometimes that's going to come right at you from the front. Sometimes it's going to come quietly from the back. Okay, but you got to have that courage. And the courage is what? In following the instructions of the Lord. Look, people don't really care if you just kind of walk the same way they're walking. But if you follow the Lord's instructions, even if you're not affecting them or hurting them, what do? They don't like it. Part of that's because, well, it causes conviction. Okay? So it's sometimes hard to do that. So he's telling him, in this case, follow my instruction, be strong, be courageous. And he's talking about in the context of the whole instructions. Okay? Then he says, do not turn from it to the right or to the left. Don't get out in either ditch. Okay? So that you will have success wherever you go. Okay? God's going to remove all the people that are in his way. He's going to have success. But it's still stipulation of what? If you were following the commands of the Lord and walking with him. Look, Moses did almost everything right except one time, and he didn't get to go in. Okay? So God's saying, make sure with all the strength and courage you got to follow my instruction. Okay? Because ultimately you want to have success, and I want you to have success. So follow my instructions. Okay? And to do those things. Now, God will remove people in authority of leadership. Okay? He will. We talked about that some last time. He will do that. Okay? He did Moses. And look, you and I haven't spent near the time Moses did with God, and he didn't get to walk into the promised land, even though he what? He begged God and pleaded with God, let him go in, and God said no. Okay? So God will remove people, and so what he's telling him is let's don't go down that road. Be strong and courageous to follow me and my instructions so you'll have success. He says, this book of instruction must not depart from your mouth. You are to meditate on it day and night so that you may carefully observe everything written in it. For then you will prosper and succeed in whatever you do. Haven't I commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Okay? But here's the thing, current usage status, if God's using you, your current usage status doesn't guarantee future usage. Moses found out the hard way. Okay? And he's given Joshua a warning. Your current status doesn't just guarantee automatically a free pass. Okay? It's not a guarantee of future, especially if your walk, your attitude, and your sinful actions are contrary to God's word and character. He will remove you no matter how much. God's not all that fortunate that he's got us on his side. Okay? It's more the other way around. Okay? But our current situation, we can't go and, God's using me now. Look how important I am. And then kind of walk on our way and think that gives us a free pass. Get out of jail card, free out of jail card. It gives us a free pass for whatever we want to do in the future. Well, because, God used us here, so He's still using us. And He's being very careful to let Joshua know, follow my commands. And he knows good and well that Moses didn't get to go, because God just told him, hey, Moses is dead, you're up. Okay? So your current status doesn't guarantee anything. Success following God doesn't give us that free pass to just do whatever we want in the future. We still have to follow the Lord. Now, chapter 2 deals with the spies and Rahab. And I said I didn't want to touch this. So these two chapters were actually in last week's stuff. I didn't really want to touch it then. I really wanted to... Rahab, as weird as it may sound from a guy's perspective, excuse me, she's one of my favorite people. Okay? And so I wanted to kind of be able to kind of expand it just a little bit as we looked at this one. Okay? I will also tell you for a read right here, I wouldn't have done what Joshua did unless God put on a big screen up there, handwritten out in longhand, send in spies. There's no way I would have done that if I was Joshua. Because Joshua was one of the original 12 spies, right? He knows what happened the last time spies went in. All of them are gone now except for him and Caleb. Okay? And he had to spend 40 more years, well, really 39 more years, out in the wilderness before he got to go into the promised land. The last thing I would have done personally was go, I think I'll send a spy or two in, because I wouldn't want to take a chance another 40 years. Okay? But look, God may very well have told him. Okay? But no matter what it was, God had a providential plan on this. Okay? But from a worldly man's perspective, I would have never done this. Okay? Chapter 2, verse 1. Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 men as spies from the Achaia grove, saying, go and scout the land, especially Jericho. Okay, so it's not the whole land. Don't go look and see, is it really good? This is really getting ready for military maneuvers. Okay? So they left. They came to the house of a prostitute named Rahab, and they stayed there. Now, how in the world would 2 spies end up at the house of Rahab? Well, one's by divine appointment. And I'm going to talk about that one again in a minute. I'm going to take it back to just kind of the natural world. Hey, you've got a woman in a pagan city that's a prostitute. You think people are used to seeing people come in and out of her house on a regular basis, day and night? And you've got some people that probably come in the cover of night. And you've got some that strut right on up the city walk during the middle of the day. Don't care, right? But they're used to seeing people in and out, in and out. Okay? So for the casual observer, most of this would go unnoticed because they were used to it. Now, you've always got somebody, though, no matter how casual most people are, you always got somebody that's got their nose in everybody's business. Okay? Now, but you got 2 spies, they come into the land, and they end up going to, now whether they sought her out, now I don't think they showed up with bad motives in mind, but whether they sought her out or whether they just God directly, divine appointment, and they go to the one place that people, not just people in the city of Jericho come to visit, people passing through would have gone in there. It would have gone unnoticed by the majority of the people. Okay? So they're going into an area where just kind of normal activity. It's the wrong way to say it, but the normal business activity of the day going on. And nobody's paying attention to it. Okay? So they end up where visitors normally show up. Nobody probably thinks a second thing about it. Okay? Now, goes on to say, verse 2, the king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelite men have come here tonight to investigate the land. Somehow, there's still always a small group of folks that got their nose in everybody else's business. And in this case, probably would have been a smart thing to be doing. You know there's this big group of folks across the Jordan River that are coming your way. Okay? So there's a couple guys coming in town tonight. We think they're from over there. Then the king of Jericho sent word to Rahab and said, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, for they came to investigate the entire land. Hey, the king probably absolutely thought nothing about, or didn't worry about Rahab at all, thinking she was going to put these folks up, that she would have had anything to do with them. Would have never thought that this was anything other than, hey, we got a couple of guys coming through town. They stopped to see the prostitute. He probably thought nothing unusual about this, except he now knows that they're probably from the group of folks outside that are planning to come in here and try to take our city. Okay? And so he probably thought absolutely nothing against Rahab, okay, on this. So verse 4, but the woman had taken the two men and hidden them. So she said, yes, the men did come to me, but I don't know where they were from. At nightfall, when the city gate was about to close, the men went out, and I don't know where they were going. Chase after them quickly, and you can catch up with them. Hey, you know what? Yeah, they came. Nothing unusual. A couple guys come through. They stopped to visit. And right before they're going to close the gate, look, at night they close the city gate down. Well, that's protection, especially when you got this big group of folks across the river over here. So, right before they closed the gate up, they left town, and I don't know where they're going. But you know what? If you send some folks after them, you can probably catch up with them. Okay. Verse 6, but she had taken them to the roof and hidden them among the stalks of flax that she had arranged on the roof. The men pursued them along the road to the fords of the Jordan. As soon as they left to pursue them, the city gate was shut. So they go out, gate shut, they're closed up in there. They're inside there. And she's what? She's put them up on the roof and she's got them hid. She's done what? She's lied to her king, and she's deceived him and her own people. Because she's one of the people of Jericho, right? Which means also the king probably never would have thought she would have done that, which is why I don't think he ever came to her thinking she was up to something. Okay? Because, she's one of us. Okay? Now, before the men fell asleep, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land. Did you just catch what she said? I know who? The Lord. Not your God. Not your idols. I know the Lord has given you what? That land. That geographic piece of dirt. I know the Lord's given you this. Okay? And that the terror of you has fallen on us. And everyone who lives in the land is panicking because of you. You spies, but all y'all out there, the whole area is panicking because of you. Okay? Because of y'all. We know y'all are out there. And I know that God has given y'all this land. Okay? And this is going to tell how she knows. Look at verse 10. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt. When did that happen? 40 years before. 40 years before. God did that miracle, and the people in that land, in the future promised land, in the future inheritance of Israel land, They heard what God had done 40 years before, and they knew that God was giving them that land. Now, how do you know that's the case? Go back and we talked about last week the Amalekites. The Amalekites, right after they left Egypt, attacked them because they knew they were coming to that land to take it. And they figured, we'll make a preemptive strike and get them while they're slaves, just coming out of slavery. They're tired, they're weary, they don't have anybody, they don't have a military, they don't have any weapons, and we'll hit them while they're out there. They tried to destroy them, and God said, because of what you did, I'm going to blot y'all out, okay, in the future. Those people in the promised land knew from the time what happened to the Egyptians that the God of the Israelites was bringing them to that land. Rahab says, we heard what happened, and I know because of that, God's given you this land. The Lord's given you this land. And what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings you completely destroyed across the Jordan. When we heard this, we lost heart, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. Did you catch what she just said? She just confessed with her mouth what? The God of heaven and earth is God. You know what she just did? She just made a salvation statement. She just confessed with her mouth what? He's God. Not just any God, not the God of Israel, not some other. What? She said, your God is the God of what? Heaven and earth. God of heaven and earth. She's just, look, this is the same type of thing. She heard and she's got a repentant heart. All them other folks heard, and guess what? The Amalekites, they heard, and they tried to go and wipe out the Israelites as they come out of slavery. All the other groups have heard, just like her. Everybody else in Jericho's heard. Everybody else that's in the lands heard, and guess what? They're not going, hey, you know what? Your God's the God of heaven and earth. They're going, we don't like you, and we're going to band together to try to fight you. That ain't what she does. Hers is a confession not of just save my life. Hers is a confession of who the one true real God is. Okay? So, verse 12, now please swear to me by the Lord that you will also show kindness to my father's family, because I show kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father, my mother, my brother, my sisters, and all who belong to them, and save us from death. Guess what? She's asking for a current moment, save me from death, but guess what she's getting? She's got more than just saving from death. She got saved into life. Okay? The men answered her, we will give our lives for yours if you don't report our mission. We will show kindness and faithfulness to you when the Lord gives us this land. Then she let them down by rope through the window, since she lived in a house that was built into the wall of the sea. You think God's providential plan had her get in that spot? She was off looking for a new rental house at some point in time, and every one of them closed down but the one that was in the wall. Okay? So she could let them down where? Right through a rope, right through the window. Okay? And then verse 16, go to the hill country so that the men pursuing you won't find you. She said to them, hide there for 3 days until they return. Afterwards, go on your way. The men said to her, we will be free from this oath you made us swear, unless when we enter the land you tie this scarlet cord. What color scarlet? Red. The scarlet cord to the window through which you let us down. Bring your father, your mother, brothers, all your family, father's family into your house. If anyone goes out the doors of your house, his death will be his own fault, and we will be innocent. But if anyone with you in the house should be harmed, his death will be our fault. If you report our mission, we are free from this oath you made us swear. And she says this, let it be as you say. She sent them away. After they had gone, she tied the scarlet cord to the window. She didn't wait till the day when they're going to march around and the walls come tumbling down before she put that scarlet thread. She went ahead right then and put that thing. Y'all ever know people go, you know what? Yeah, I believe in Jesus and the blood, but I'm going to wait till I get on my deathbed. I'm going to wait till I get to the end of my life. Guess what? You may not get that opportunity. She might not get that opportunity. She didn't wait around and go, you know what? I'm just going to wait and see if they show up. She went ahead right then and tied that scarlet thread. What? That red thread, that symbolizing the blood's what was going to save her and her family. Okay? Going to save her and her family. Now, here's the interesting thing. Throughout this text and any of the couple other texts I'm going to look at real quick, it never tells us and it never indicates to us whether she was right or wrong in the really lies she told. You know, sometimes I told you got to put things in tension. Kind of have to wrestle them out a little bit. Sometimes you have to accept some things that may be a little hard. I think this might be one of those. Okay? Because the Bible tells us who's the father of lies? Satan. Okay? All right? Now, I'm kind of thinking Satan didn't try to get her to make this lie, because if anything, he'd rather her not lied this moment. Okay? But the Bible doesn't give us one way or the other really. I don't know. Maybe he does give us a little bit of hint. But I don't know. I think you got to wrestle with that part about the lie, though. Okay? Here's what it says in Hebrews chapter 11. I'll tell you what, let me read the James 2:25 first. In the same way, wasn't Rahab the prostitute also justified by works in receiving the messengers and sending them out by a different route? Well, she definitely deceived the king, and she definitely made a statement. I don't know who they were. She also had them hid. She said they were gone. I got them hid. Okay? But it says here, by those works, she was what? Justified. Okay? And then Hebrews chapter 11. I mean, if you get into Hebrews chapter 11, you pretty close. You've made it on up there in God's list. Okay? Hebrews chapter 11, verse 31 says, by faith Rahab the prostitute welcomed the spies in peace and didn't perish with those who disobeyed. Okay? Because of her faith, she was saved. Okay? Because of the works that she did. She believed, but what was her confession? Your God's the God of heaven and earth. Okay? Your God's the God of the universe. Your God's given y'all this land. Please spare me. She's making a confession. Now, I'll be honest with you. I kind of wrestled with this one for the last few days a little bit. You know? And Israel's about to come across the Jordan, and they're coming to Jericho. They're not coming to have a party. Actually, when they come across, it's going to be a war. Okay? And war's fighting. War's killing. War is strategy and tactics. War's tricking and misleading and spies and all kinds of stuff. Right? So, and you know, hey, y'all play games, right? You ever play any games? Hey, you play games, and what do? Some games are meant to what? To bluff and all these things you're trying to, right? So kind of give you an idea. This is a war that's fixing to take over. Okay? So was she lying to the king and to her own city? Yeah. But I'd make the argument she's changed teams. Not just I'm trying to save myself from being destroyed today. She's changed teams permanently. She went from being an enemy of God to being in the family of God. In more ways than one, we'll see in a minute. Okay? She changed teams. She changed armies. Okay? And she went and she joined the army that God was leading, and not the people who God was actually judging for their sin that had been going on for hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of years. Okay? And so she's changed teams. Okay? So based on her comments, she's believing that the one true God is the one that's bringing them in here. And you know what? I'm not on the losing side anymore. I'm going to join the winning side. And you know, hey, when you got saved, did you join the winning side? You came out of the losing side to the winning side, right? Because here's the thing. We got the book of Revelation. We know how it ends, okay? She didn't have that, but what she did here, she heard what God had done to the Egyptians because of the Israelite people. And because of that and all the stuff she's saying, she said what? Yours is the God of heaven and earth, okay? Now, so I don't know if I answered the whole lie thing very well, but like I said, I just kind of think that we're not talking about deception as far as just regular life. We are talking about a war situation. I could be wrong, okay? And if I'm wrong, here's the deal. If she just got saved, look, when you just got saved, did you know how to act? Did you know all that stuff? It's a process you got to grow into, right? So if she gets saved one moment, next moment she's telling a lie out there. You know what? She's going to walk and learn the process, okay? She can be forgiven for that, okay? So either way you want to look at it, okay? But ultimately, Rahab ends up, they end up in the house of a prostitute. And ultimately, by God's providential plan, okay, the salvation of Rahab and her family, not just their current lives, their spiritual lives take place. Okay? But she doesn't just end up there. Okay? What she does then affects generations. Okay? Now, come back to that in just a second. But she heard what the God of Israel did, okay? And she responded to God's call. Now, look at chapter 6 real quick to tie up this piece of the thing about Rahab. Chapter 6, verse 22. Okay, they've gone in. Joshua says to the two men who had scouted the land, "Go to the prostitute's house and bring the woman out there and all who are with her, just as you swore to her." So the young men who had scouted went in and brought out Rahab, her father, mother, brothers, and all who belonged to her. They brought them out, her whole family, and settled them outside the camp of Israel. Why outside the camp? The camp's over there on the other side of Jordan. The camp's over there. They're in safety. Okay. The men are over here in the city fighting. The camp's over here, and God has them move them over. So God takes and has them move her out, and they move outside the camp. Why outside the camp? Remember, inside the camp, you have to be clean. Now, I think she's been saved at this moment already, but that hasn't made her ceremonially clean by the Jewish law. That will come. How do you know? Well, she'll end up where she does based on staying unceremonially unclean. Okay? That's a mouthful. Okay. But she couldn't go immediately into the camp, but there would be a day. There'd be a day that she would be able to. Okay? Now, so she's repented. She's going to get cleaned up ceremonially. I think spiritually she's just gotten cleaned up already. Okay? I think she's gotten saved. Now, bring her outside the camp. Look at verse 24. They burned the city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron into the treasury of the Lord's house. However, Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute, her father's family, and all who belonged to her because she hid the messengers Joshua had sent to spy on Jericho. She still lives in Israel today. When this was written, okay, and this would have been written, this last piece right here was probably written by somebody other than Joshua. Okay? After Joshua's gone, okay, But even if it was Joshua that penned this, at the day you get to the end of Joshua's life, Rahab is still living where? In the promised land. In the land that now is being inhabited and owned by Israel. She's living in the land. Now here's the really cool part. How do we know she got cleaned up and got inside the camp? Well, she marries a man named Solomon, who's from the tribe of Levi. Okay? And so Rahab, the really former prostitute, okay, who's now clean, she marries a man that's in the tribe of Judah, Solomon, and they have a son. And that guy's name's Boaz. And Boaz is going to grow up and he's going to be a man. And he's going to have this girl. All right, so Boaz, his daddy's from the tribe of Judah. Where's his mama from? The town of Jericho. Okay? He got Jericho blood in him too. And he's gonna come up, and one of these days there's gonna be this little girl. She's a widow named Ruth. Read about that in the book of Ruth, right? Ruth's gonna come up, and guess what? She's not from the tribe of anything. She's a Moabite. And she's gonna what? He's gonna be her kinsman redeemer, and she's gonna marry him. And they're gonna have a son. And that son, which is, by the way, you got some more DNA right there, right? That's a Moabite that's in there. They got a son, and their son's named Obed. Obed has a son named Jesse. And Jesse's going to have a son that will one day be called King David. Rahab the prostitute that heard what the God of Israel did to the Egyptians and made a confession, got herself in the line of King David. But you know what? That's cool. That ain't cool enough. Because from David you got Solomon, and from there you come on down and you end up with who? The Messiah himself. Rahab the prostitute DNA is in the earthly body of Jesus. Look, I don't care what you've done. God can still, look, you and I, it don't matter how hard we try, we ain't getting in that DNA line. Okay? But we can be adopted into the family. Okay? But that's why I think Rahab's one of the coolest people in Scripture. Because she didn't just go, you know what, save me and then go back to her old ways. She got herself in there with the line of the tribe of Judah. And so here today, even today, we not only talk about her, but also when we talk about Jesus and the Word became flesh, guess what? Some of that DNA in that flesh is from her right here. To me, she's one of the coolest people in Scripture. Okay? Now back up real quick to chapter 5, verse 13. If you're in 6, you probably may be on your same page. What you have here is you've got a point in time where throughout the Old Testament there were occasionally times where there was the pre-incarnate Christ shows up in physical form, bodily form in the Old Testament. And what you have here is one of those times. Okay? Chapter 5, verse 13. When Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a sword drawn in his hand. Joshua approached him and asked, "Are you with us or with our enemies?" Okay? And he answered, "Neither." I ain't with none of you. I think he's about to tell him, I'd suggest you get on my team, but I ain't on either one of yours. Okay? I have now come as commander of the Lord's army. Okay? Then Joshua bowed his face to the ground in worship and asked him, "What does my Lord want to say to his servant?" The commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, "Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place you are standing is holy." And Joshua did that. How do you know that this isn't just an angel? There's a couple of things. Anytime an angel shows up in Scripture, Anytime an angel shows up in Scripture and somebody bows down before it, the angel always says, get up, don't do that. This case lets them bow down. Then takes and says what? Remove your sandals because you're on holy ground. Well, who else did God actually tell that to? Moses at the burning bush. It wasn't as to any angel, it was God himself there, and he tells him, you're on holy ground. You're not on angel ground, you're on holy ground. So in this case, what's he say? He lets him not only bow down, but he also what? Tells him, remove your shoes. And how would Joshua have known this? He was closer to Moses than anybody. You think he probably heard the story 1,000 times? He might even sit around sometimes listening to Moses going, not again, right? He knows, though, what this means. What? Take your shoes off. You're on holy ground. Okay? So this is one of those moments that this is the pre-incarnate Christ shows up on the scene. Okay? Now, that's got to help you when you're going into battle. But notice he says, I ain't on your side or the enemy's. What's his point? His point is what it's been all along. You better be on my team. You better be on my side. If you're not on my side, look, I'm not following you. You better be following me, okay? He's the commander of the Lord's army, not the other way around. Now, look at chapter 7. All right, they have now, of course, gone and they've defeated Jericho. They've got Rahab out. Chapter 7 is their first defeat, which is an interesting thing. It's their defeat at Ai. Look at chapter 7, verse 1. The Israelites, however, were unfaithful regarding the things set apart for destruction. Achan, son of Camri, son of from the tribe of Judah, took some of what was set apart, and the Lord's anger burned against the Israelites. Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Bethaven, east of Bethel, and told them, go up and scout out the land. So the men went up and they scouted Ai. They've gone on a military mission. They're going to look it over. We need a battle plan. We're fixing to head up there. What's the best way to get there? How do we go? All right, so he sends them up. Verse 3, after returning to Joshua, they reported to him, don't send all the people, but send about 2,000 or 3,000 men to attack Ai. Since the people of Ai are so few, don't wear out all of our people. So about 3,000 went up there, but they fled from the men of Ai. The men of Ai struck down about 36 of them and chased them from outside the city gate to the quarries, striking them down on the descent. As a result, the people lost heart. They just ended up what? They just ended up losing a battle. Why? Well, one of the reasons is pride. They sent over there and said, we took Jericho, man, that was so simple. We did that. And they come back and say, you know what? That's a little bitty town. It ain't nothing like Jericho. Little bitty town. Ain't all that many of them. We don't need it. We'll make sure we got overwhelming force, but hey, all we need is 2,000 or 3,000 people. It'll be a cakewalk, no big deal. And so what do? Joshua makes a blunder I don't think he's going to make again. He sends 3,000 people, and they get their tails whooped. And they come back, and now they're like, what? What happened? I thought God was going to give us all this. Okay? Look at verse 10. Then the Lord said to Joshua, stand up. Why have you fallen face down? Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant that I appointed for them. They have taken some of what was set apart. They have stolen and deceived and put those things in their own belongings. What's taking place? One of them guys decided, hey, that stuff looks pretty good. And he went and he hid it. And didn't tell nobody. Now here's the deal. Joshua and all of them, they didn't have a clue. But notice what they didn't do. They didn't ask the Lord. They didn't get a battle plan from the Lord. See, God had given them a battle plan for Jericho, didn't he? March around that city. Do certain things. They went by their wisdom. Hey, there's only a few of them. We don't even need to send the whole army. We'll send a couple thousand people up there. We'll wipe them folks out. We'll be done. They not only didn't get their battle plan from God, they didn't even check with God. Guess what? Had they have checked with God, God probably would have said, hey, you know what? You got some folks that got some stuff going on. You better get handled before y'all go up there. You know what Joshua would have done? He got some stuff handled before they went up there. But nobody thought they needed to. They didn't think they needed to. Okay? But guess what? It cost Achan and his family their lives. See, it didn't just Achan, but his wife and kids got killed too. That's punishment over it. And that seems kind of harsh till you remember, hey, how many people did it just say died? At least 36 people died.
You repeat.
Achan and his family, they all died. Him and his wife and his kids. They died. And that sounds harsh until you remember what? 36 men died because of Achan's theft. 36 men that had families probably. 36 men that wouldn't have died because God would have handed all that over to them. And they died because of some other man's sin. And they lost the battle because of it. So God, what? He's punishing Achan and his family for what they've done. Okay? I said it in the prayer opening here, and y'all have heard me say it before in prayers. There's every so often I pray and say, hey, Lord, reveal to us anything going on in the sinners. Guess what? More than once, I've had my eyes go, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Okay? You ask the Lord, guess what He'll do? You don't have to sit there and try to always figure out how to finagle and figure things out. There's something going on. The Lord will show it to you. Okay? He could have asked. Now, chapter 9 is going to be another situation where they messed this up. You remember what they had been told before they went into the promised land? When you get into the promised land, you are to make no covenants, no treaties with nobody in the land. None. All the folks that inhabit your land have to go. Make no treaties. So they go in there in chapter 9, deception by Gibeon. When all the kings heard about Jericho and Ai, those who were west of the Jordan in the hill country and those in the Judean foothills all along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea toward Lebanon, verse 2, they formed a unified alliance to fight against Joshua and Israel. Okay? Most of them, they've heard what God's been doing. Instead of repenting, they decide we're going to fight against you. Verse 3, when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they acted deceptively. They gathered provisions, took worn-out sacks on their donkeys, old wineskins cracked and mended. They wore old patched-up sandals on their feet and threadbare cloth on their bodies. Their entire provisions of bread were dry and crumbling. They went to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal and said to him and the men of Israel, we come from a distant land. Please make a treaty with us. The men of Israel replied to the Hivites, not knowing they were Hivites, perhaps you live among us. How can we make a treaty with you? They knew not to make any treaties with any people there. They knew that. Well, there wasn't Facebook in that day. They couldn't go and do a quick thing or LinkedIn and look and see, hey, they give us some information about them. Couldn't do all that. Verse 8, they said to Joshua, we are your servants. Then Joshua asked them, who are you and where do you come from? And they replied to him, your servants have come from far away land, way over there. Okay? Because of the reputation of the Lord your God. They've heard, right? Because of the reputation of the Lord your God. We have heard of His fame and all that He did in Egypt. And all that He did to the 2 Amorite kings beyond the Jordan. Okay. Verse 11, so our elders and all our inhabitants of our land told us, take provisions with you for the journey. Go and meet them and say, we are your servants. Please make a treaty with us. This bread of ours was warm when we took it from our houses as food on the day we left to come to you. But see, it's now dry and crumbly. These wineskins, they were new when we filled them, but see, they are cracked. And see, these clothes and sandals of ours are worn out from the extremely long journey. Then the men of Israel took some of their provisions, but did not seek the Lord's direction. They made a treaty with them to let them live, and the leaders of the community swore by an oath to them. Look, those folks, what'd they do? I mean, it's really a great plan. If you're wanting not to get wiped out, it's a great plan. Well, they put on the rattiest thing they could find. They got some sandals that were like, it'd be like today you got a set of Goodyear tires on your car that had gone 20 years too long. They got the longest thing, worst looking stuff they could find. The rattiest clothes. They took their bread and said, hey, look, it was fresh when we left. Look, it's been months since we left. You know, you can't call up and see where we came from because we way over there. We heard what your God did from way over there. And what did they do? They didn't consult God. They went by manly, worldly wisdom, by what they saw and what they heard, and they did what? They made a treaty. Made a treaty. By what they saw. They didn't inquire of the Lord. They took in what they saw. They made their decision based on what they thought they knew. Based on their experience. I mean, because it takes a long time for a wineskin to get looking like that. So y'all had to have come a long way. Okay? Look, we work in an area that has lots of people that try lots of deception, half-truths, manipulation. I mean, sometimes just pure lies and cover-ups. You know, y'all been around long enough at Warrior Center to know this, right? Okay? That's the world we deal with. Okay? Maybe somewhat more than others, especially in ministry setting. Okay? Look, I've said for years, I don't understand it. I don't understand the whole thing. But I've seen guys leave Memphis, not have a penny in their pocket, walk out the door, and by the time they get the 1 mile up to the gas station, they've got enough money for alcohol, cigarettes, and food. How do they do it? I don't know. The manipulation and the deception and that is there. Okay? Can figure it out. And we deal with that type of stuff. Okay? But what we need to do is we need to be quicker to ask the Lord to reveal stuff to us than us trying to figure it out. Because look, if you go with the worst thing in the world when you're dealing with something like that is your experience. Okay? My experience says this. Like I have those phone calls all the time. Well, you know, in my experience this. Let's leave your experience out of this for a minute. What does the Lord say about this? Okay? And because they didn't, they're going to have to deal with this people. God doesn't let them go back. You know what? Y'all lied to us, and God's going to let us take away this treaty. You made the treaty in my name. You're going to keep it. Okay? And they become a big-time thorn in their side. Okay? And it all happened because of what? They did not seek the Lord. Now, chapter 11 is just a summary of the conquest. Okay? Chapter 11, verse 20. This is one of those hard verses. I'll tell you what, go to verse 19. No city made peace with Israel except the Hivites. That's some folks that just deceived them. Okay? Who inhabited Gibeon. All of them were taken in battle. All the cities. So this is a summary of what took place. All the rest of the cities were taken in battle. For it was the Lord's intention to harden their hearts, so they would engage Israel in battle, be completely destroyed without mercy, and annihilated just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Now, why is this hard one? Because in modern Western thought, God destroying people is like, well, that's bad in their mindset. But what took place? They've had 620 plus years to repent. They've had 40 since they heard what God did to Egypt, and they've not repented. And there becomes a time when God says, no more. No more. Okay? The door gets shut. Look, Noah on the ark. Who shut the ark door? God. If Noah had shut the ark door when it started raining and people started coming up to it, what would a human do? We'd let the door down to let people in. But Noah didn't shut the door. God shut the door. Because there's a point in time, it didn't matter who showed up. The door was sealed. It was a done deal. It's the point a man wants to die in the judgment. There's not a just show up when you want to. Okay? In their case, they had had plenty of time, and God says enough. And now judgment's going to come. So he put in their heart to what? Fight against Israel, not try to make treaties with them. Okay? Fight against them so that they would have this. Now they've been dealing with it for a long time. Psalm chapter 37, verse 13 says this, the Lord laughs at him because he sees that his day is coming. And he's talking about the wicked person and their schemes against righteousness. They had schemed for so long. Okay? And God, He's holy, He's the judge, like it or not. Okay? See, in our world today where they tell us all the things that God says that are evil, what are they all doing? In our day today, they're all going, hey, that's the good stuff. Right? That's all good now. And you think that those things God says that we don't, so that you think that's evil. Well, you're evil because you think that. We're in the day that people call evil good and good evil. Had you been in Jericho or in the Promised Land back in those days, guess what those people would have thought? The same thing. They would have thought nothing about all the things they were doing. Okay? They would have thought those things were good, and if you say they're not, well, you're evil. Okay, it's no different. So this is a summary of the conquest. Now, we'll skip all the middle section and let's go to the last two chapters of Joshua real quick. Joshua chapter 23. This is Joshua's farewell address. A long time after the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them, Joshua was old and advanced in years. Now they haven't defeated every little bitty outpost, every little bitty piece of all the little peoples, but all the big stuff's handled. Okay, they've been given rest. Now they got to, just as they spread out a little bit over time, they'll take some of these little bitty small things, but the big stuff's handled. And so God gives them rest. What's that mean? They get to go and enjoy the land and have their houses and their families and enjoy in life. Okay, and he's gotten old. So Joshua, verse 2, Joshua summoned all Israel, including its elders, leaders, judges, officers, and said to them, I am old, advanced in age. You have seen for yourselves everything the Lord your God did to those nations on your account, because it was the Lord your God who was fighting for you. Okay, let's skip down to verse 6. Be very strong and continue obeying all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, so that you do not turn from it to the right or the left, so that you do not associate with the nations remaining among you. Do not call the names of their gods or make an oath to them. Do not serve them or bow down and worship to them. Instead, be loyal to the Lord your God as you have been to this day. That group of folks that came in with Joshua had done pretty good. Okay? The Lord has driven out great and powerful nations before you. No one is able to stand against you to this day. That's pretty good word that they've been faithful. Okay? This group of people have been faithful. Now, chapter 24, look at verse 2. He's given a summary of how they got there. Joshua said to all the people, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah, that's the father of Abraham and Nahor, they lived beyond the Euphrates and worshipped other gods. We talked about this about Abraham. Abraham's father and family worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the region beyond the Euphrates, led him through the land of Canaan, and multiplied his descendants. I gave him Isaac, and Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. Okay, so he's giving them a quick rundown. Look at verse 14. Therefore, fear the Lord and worship him in sincerity and truth. Get rid of the gods your fathers worshipped beyond the Euphrates and in Egypt, and worship the Lord. If it does not please you to worship the Lord, choose for yourself today which you will worship. The gods of your fathers, the gods your fathers worship beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my family, we will worship the Lord. What's he telling them? You know what? Make your choice today. Terah, Abraham, Nahor, what they worshipped a long time ago before I call all those gods over there, all the gods, the idols and all that mess that's over here. Pick that or pick the Lord. Not both. Not both and. Either or. Okay? But Joshua says what? As for me, I'm going to do it. Look, can you make anybody else do anything when it comes to spiritual things? No. And neither could Joshua. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Verse 19, but Joshua told the people, you will not be able to worship the Lord because He is holy God. He's jealous God. He will not forgive your transgressions and sins. If you abandon the Lord and worship foreign gods, He will turn against you, harm you, and completely destroy you after He has been good to you. If you do these things, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your past. If you start worshiping these things in your current and in your future, God will take and destroy you just like He's done all these others. As the commander of the Lord's army said, I ain't on either side. You better be on mine. Okay? Same thing. And then look, last thing, same chapter 24, last chapter, verse 31. Israel worshiped the Lord throughout Joshua's lifetime and the lifetime of the elders who outlived Joshua and who experienced all the works the Lord had done for Israel. That generation, not the one that died. Look, the other generation died out. They were the ones that were slaves. They were the ones that saw what God did to the Egyptians. They're the ones that saw God at the Red Sea. They're the ones that heard God's voice when He gave the 10 Commandments on the mountain. They're the ones who saw God lead them out. They were the ones, and then they what? They rebelled and didn't trust God. And they didn't get to see it. They weren't faithful. But their kids were. Under Joshua, they come into the land. They were. Now look, it's going to, like anything, dealing with your kids and your grandkids and everything. Look, think back. Your grandmama probably, if she was looking at you right now, she'd pull your hair out, wouldn't she? Okay? Same thing happens. Every generation walks a little farther away from God. Generation as a whole. Okay? And guess what they're going to do? Same thing, which is what Joshua was telling them a minute ago. You're not going to be able to do it. Okay, not going to be able to do it. So, a secularized society will walk away from God. Okay, will. No matter what we can't rely on what our parents, grandparents, and great grandparents did. Okay, see, it has to become our faith. And while you can't control what everybody else is doing, it does kind of fall on all of us as we teach our kids to teach our grandkids. You know, it's a trickle-down effect. Okay? So, when you look at the book of Joshua, just remember, Joshua had big shoes to fill, and he made a couple mistakes by not asking God, what do you think? Okay? What should I do? But other than that, it comes back to the end and it says, they walked with God. Okay? They walked with God. Okay? And so we can learn from Joshua quite a few lessons. And I think one of the biggest ones is, hey, God revealed to us, tell me what you want. Y'all ever stood before somebody or had somebody stand before you and they got this, you know what, I think God's leading me in this, or I think God wants me to do that, or, you know, and you ever looked at him and go, well, have you asked him? And sometimes you'll get an answer from that and you'll go, man, the answer sure don't sound like you asked him, right? But you have to be careful with that type of stuff because people will come to you with that. Okay? They'll come to you with that. But what we always need to remember is before you make any plans or at least taking those plans into action, we need to stop and go, hey, God, what do you think?